Well, today we are in our fourth sermon in our sermon series, Alive, that 40 days walking with the risen Christ. And today we are talking about overcoming failure. And anyone here not failed? Has everyone here failed? If you have failed, raise your hand. And we've failed at all kinds of things every day. And failure, we act like it's a bad word, but it's not. It's something that's true, that happens to all of us, something that each and every one of us experiences at some point in our life. And the thing I want you to know most of all is that Christ is alive with you in every single moment, and your future is not your failure or your perceived failure. History is full of people who have overcome failure. In fact, that's what the Bible truly is. And here's just a snapshot of someone who you may know who was told he was a failure and definitely overcame it. He did not actually speak, this person did not speak until he was 4 and did not read until he was 7 years old. And it caused his teachers and parents to think maybe he was handicapped, he was slow, he was antisocial. And eventually he was expelled from school, refused admittance into the polytech school he wanted to attend. And it may have taken a bit longer, but most people would agree that he caught on pretty well in the end. He even won a Nobel Prize and changed the face of modern physics. You know who that was? Einstein. Albert Einstein was told, this kid's going to be a failure. And it's amazing to me that, we just give up. And we end up failing others when we assume failure and give up on other people. We assume failure when we give up on ourselves. And the Bible, though, is filled with stories of overcoming failure. Failure happens, but we are overcomers because of Christ. The resurrection itself shows us that death is not a failure. Death wasn't the end. Jesus shows us that. Jesus, in fact, is the one who says, I make all things new. Is there something in your life that feels like you have reached the end, like it's over, and you need Jesus to help you figure out, how do I make things new? Jesus is all about taking what we think is dead, deserted, failed, and resurrecting it, renewing it, revealing that what was dead is alive and what was failed has a future. Because our future is not predicated on what failures we've done. Your future is greater than your failure. It's more than what you can see because of the possibilities that the living, risen Christ can bring into your life. We have a resurrection that tells us this, but also the Bible itself, even over not just the resurrection, is full of stories of overcoming failure. And today I want to focus on Simon Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples, and he displayed a particular proficiency, I think I'll say, for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. He knew really how to say the wrong thing, but his life reached the lowest point when he denied Jesus 3 times. And yet within a couple of months, he was boldly then preaching about Jesus on the day of Pentecost. And because of Peter, the church that day grew to over 3,000 people that day he preached in the history of the church. Peter did that. And what made the difference? He had gone from being someone who denied Jesus and was feeling ashamed to the man who stood up in front of a crowd and told them exactly who Jesus was. How did that happen? What difference happened to bring him that confidence, that boldness, that joy? It was knowing that Christ was risen. It was that he could be alive because Christ is alive. And an encounter with the risen Christ made all the difference. And so that's why I want for you Easter not just to be a day that you showed up at church and praised that Christ was risen, but a day that every day you can encounter the risen Christ, so that your story could be one where you can know that you can overcome failure, you can overcome anything, because Christ is risen. And I want you to know this, that right here, Jesus helps us in our present struggles the places where we're right now in the murky feeling where we think, oh, I am failing and this is so hard. And he heals us from past failures. And because all of us face struggles and challenges in life. I mean, and some of you might be in a place right now where you feel rock bottom, or you think nothing is working, or you've reached some kind of a barrier and you're struggling to know, how do I break through, or what is next? What's the next step? How am I going to make it through this? And the good news is that Christ is alive, and he's given us the power of the Holy Spirit to work in us, knowing that God is alive, always with us. And so I want you to see what we just read here in the Gospel of John. Jesus appeared to the disciples, and Peter says, I'm going to go fish. Now, some people might say, why is he fishing? Isn't he supposed to be waiting for Jesus? Or isn't he supposed to be doing this? He's supposed to be focusing on something else. But the thing is, Peter's often criticized for this. Is he running away from his call? I thought he was a disciple. I thought he's an apostle. Is he going backwards now to be a fisherman? But the thing is, while he's waiting for Jesus to come back, he is still at work. So if you are waiting, while you're waiting for Jesus to work in your life, you can still be working knowing that he's on it. He's working on it. He's about to do things that you can't even imagine, and so you keep up your part. And that's exactly what Peter's doing. He still has to eat, doesn't he? So he's going to go fishing. He's not going to sit there and think it's over. Christ hasn't showed up yet. I don't know where he is. He is waiting. And he's known that he was alive. He saw him. But this is the Gospel of John. We haven't heard this story in John's Gospel yet. And in spite of all of his training, it's not going so well. I mean, he is a superb fisherman. He knows what he's doing. But somehow it's still not going great. He can't just rely on all of his training and think that he can just go out there anytime he wants and do this thing that seems so easy. And he's struggling right now just to do the thing that was the easiest thing for him to do in the world, and that's to fish. And struggle and failure and frustration. Anybody get frustrated when it's not going right? When things aren't working the way you want them to work? He is frustrated. And the thing is, what it shows us, that's just part of what it means to be a human in a fallen world. We're going to go out and even try our best, the thing that maybe we might even be the best at, and it still will not work out. And who we are and our value, our worth, is not defined in that the kind of success that the world would say is successful. In fact, the best thing that could happen to us just might be failure. Because it would show us that our reliance is not just about our own self-reliance and that we've got it all figured out, but that we have to rely on something more than just us. Not even just our skill or our prowess or how good we are at something. We have to rely on more. And the more that we have to rely on is the power of God to work in us. And in this situation here, the struggle of failure, Jesus is right there on the scene. In the early morning, he's there, but the disciples do not know that it's Jesus. Very much like the walk to Emmaus we talked about. They're walking along and Jesus is there, but they do not recognize that he's right there. And in the same way, Jesus is right there, but they don't recognize him. He's on the shore. And the point is that Jesus is always with us. He's watching. He's waiting to help. He wants to be there to help you through whatever struggle you are currently in. And whenever we are going to go about our work or go about whatever we are doing, Jesus is right there. So right now, I just want you to tell your neighbor, hey, Jesus is right here. He's right here. Jesus is right here, right now. And he will be with you in everything. Even the really easy times, he's making it easy. And in the struggle times, he's saying, hey, are you going to ask me for help? He's waiting. I mean, we are not equipped to do our work or to do it well unless we ask Jesus for help and for his direction. And the good news is he's always right here. He's waiting. He's wanting to help us in our present struggles. And right now, whatever you're going through, Jesus is with you. And I want you to hear him. I want you to see him. And I want you to welcome his intervention. And so he calls out. Some of the versions will say, children, have you any fish? Other versions say, friends, do you have any fish? He's reaching out. And he takes the initiative. Jesus is standing there, and they're not really noticing him or talking to him or asking him for help. But Jesus reaches out and takes the initiative. And I wonder if you're wondering, well, I don't see Jesus taking the initiative. He is. Are you seeing how he is working? Because Jesus is always working. He doesn't stop. He doesn't ever give up. He is right there working in your life. Do you see him, or are you so busy trying to struggle and do it on your own that you don't notice that he is right there? Jesus always acts first, and we always, right now, there are opportunities for you to respond. He called out, friends, children, do you have any fish? And he has his heart for his disciples. He addresses them as friends, as children. He does not tell them, hey, you stupid, rebellious disciples who don't listen to me. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, hey, you guys are doing a terrible job out there. He doesn't do any of that. He just says, hey there, hey fellas, hey friends, hey children, hey, do you need help? He's not talking down to them when he says, children, do you have any fish? And he's looking to them as saying, someone, I care about you. I'm caring about you. Is there someone right now who's calling out to you, I care about you? Is that Jesus working to take some initiative in your life? He uses this term of endearment and affection, and he does that because God wants to come close to you and work in your life because God adores you and loves you. And where is it that you need his help right now? Where is it right now where you are waiting and wanting Jesus to show up? Because guess what? He's already there. He's calling out to you somehow. Are you here? Are you welcoming his intervention? And looking at the text, Jesus isn't asking the disciples the question because he doesn't know the answer, right? Like, he knows it's not going well. He's aware that they could use some help. And isn't that nice that he reaches out first? That he's not just like, well, you never asked, so I didn't offer. He's always seeking us. He's always asking us if we would welcome his help. He's always intervening. And God doesn't ask a question he doesn't know the answer to. What is Jesus doing? He's engaging with them. And Jesus is engaging with us. He is seeking you out right now, asking you, how's it going? How can I help? I'm here to intervene. I'm here to help you. And then notice the disciples, they answer with a simple, honest response. And the thing I love is they don't seem to resent the question. They don't look at it as an intrusion or an insult. They're not trying to hide the problem. They don't say, no, I'm fine. I've got it all figured out. I'm going to figure this out. I can make it work, like so many of us do. How often when someone reaches out to us, that we just say, oh, no, I've got it covered. I can do it. Is God working through that person to intervene and to offer help, and we are saying no to what God wants to do in our lives? There's no suggestion throughout the rest of the passage that the disciples ever resent his intervention, however awkward or challenging it may be. And so if you're ready for Jesus to help you in your present struggle, he's right here. He's calling you. I want to invite you to welcome his intervention. If he's offering help, take it. It can't hurt, right? It literally can't make it worse. So why don't you say yes to what Jesus standing on the beach reaching out to you, offering to help you? Because I want you to know there is nothing that is beyond resurrection. That's what it means that Jesus is alive. That's what it means that you're walking with the risen Christ. There is nothing beyond resurrection. There is no failure beyond the possibility of what Jesus can do. There's no stopping what we can learn and how Jesus could do a new thing. When he intervenes, the only question is, will we obey his instruction? Will we do what he has told us to do to make it work? I mean, Jesus intervened, and this is what happened. The net, he says, throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you're going to find some fish. And then when they did, they were unable to haul the net because it was so many fish. And we don't know whether his instruction is based on he just knows that's where there's a lot of fish, or did Jesus make all those fish show up in the net? Either way, God is the one. Jesus is the one who creates, who makes things happen. He speaks and miracles happen. He speaks. That is what it is, that Jesus is the Word of God incarnate. In the very beginning of creation, the Word was spoken and it happened. Jesus speaks and miracles can happen of abundance in your life. All we have to do is receive what he has to say, and he could speak life, speak abundance into our way. I mean, Jesus knows more than the fishermen know about where to find the fish. In fact, Jesus knows more about numbers than accountants, or more about business than an entrepreneur. Jesus knows more about parenting than the greatest parenting expert out there, more about teaching than the best teacher, more about life and reaching people than we do. Let me just say this: Jesus knows more than you do. And maybe we should trust him. Maybe we should expect that if things aren't working out for us the way we want, hey, have we asked Jesus for help? Have we responded to his help he's already offering us? Because he's already trying to intervene. Have we accepted it? Are we obeying what he said? Jesus, the simple thing is, take comfort if you have failed, because Jesus knows more than you. And if you failed, that means there is more for you to learn and more for Jesus to teach you. And the thing is, this is the great thing about faith. You're never going to stop learning from Jesus. I think that's the great thing about faith. You know, and I think sometimes we don't like that because we feel like we want to get to some place where we attain it and we know it all. That's why we have to humble ourselves. Humble ourselves. In 1 Peter, we heard that call about humility. We have to expect that Jesus knows more than me. That's a safe place to live. Jesus, you know more. What is it you can teach me? What is it you're showing me? How are you intervening, and how can I obey you? And if there's more to learn, the thing is, the great thing about that is failure is just a step in learning, in growing, in becoming. Failure is never the end. Look at the tomb. It's not the end. Jesus is alive. And that means there is never a situation, there is never a circumstance where he is not there, even if you don't recognize him fully. He is right there working in your life. I can promise you that. The key is to be able to obey his instruction. In the ESV translation of the passage, it says that Jesus told them to cast the net. And it says that the disciples, so they cast it. That is a huge statement. They followed and did exactly what he said. Did you hear our epistle lesson? Cast all of your anxieties on him, for he cares for you. They are experienced fishermen. They know exactly what to do, but they do not miss a beat in doing what he has suggested to do. They don't argue. They don't disagree. They don't say, well, I know a thing or two about this, and I'm going to do it my way. No, they follow his instruction. He says, cast your net. They cast the net. And they have worked hard, and they might be frustrated. There's obviously something going on in his voice that overcame their reluctance. They didn't put up a fight to follow his instruction. They obeyed his instruction. They never assumed they knew better. They didn't say, I know what I'm doing here. No, they did it. Do we listen? Do we listen when Jesus tells us that we should cast our nets, cast our anxieties on him, that we should look to him and listen to how he is working in our lives? I mean, when Jesus gives guidance, we don't say, well, that's just too much. I don't want to do all that. I mean, he may tell us something to do that we don't want to do. That happens a lot, I think. Because we know that we're supposed to love one another and love our enemies, and yet we're like, yeah, that's just too much. I don't think I can do that. But are we willing to try? Because here's the thing, he's going to help you do it. He's not going to tell you, give you instruction, and then not equip you with the way to make it happen. If you follow the instruction, he's going to make it happen. They just cast the net, and he filled the net. Could you just cast it, the vision, the call that he's given us, and let him fill it? You don't have to do all the work. I mean, how does Jesus speak to us? I know people are always like, well, if he's giving me instructions, I'm not hearing it. Well, if we're regularly reading the scriptures, or, sometimes he speaks to us, he's always speaking to us through the scriptures. Sometimes it's in pictures, in word, and in whispers in our spirit. When we obey his instruction, we can experience a total turnaround, just like they did on that boat. The disciples went from catching nothing to catching so many fish they were unable to haul it all in. I mean, this is a picture of abundance. I mean, there are some opportunities we have right here to welcome an intervention, to obey his instruction, and then to accept his invitation. Because right there, Jesus performed this miracle. It was a way of inviting the disciples, especially Peter, into a renewed relationship with him. The purpose of a miracle is to point to the miracle worker. And all throughout the Gospel of John, Jesus is doing miracles so that we can look to him. He's the one who makes things happen, not us, no matter how much grit and hard work and self-reliance and think that we can do it all. He's the miracle worker, not us. And when we recognize who's the one who's making all this happen, then we can have it closer, and that's an invitation to a closer walk with him. And if we look in the passage, we see that the miracle, and then it points the miracle worker, it leads to recognition. And so the miracle happens, and the disciple whom Jesus loved said, "It's the Lord." And then Peter says, "Oh, it's the Lord." And he runs out of the boat. He doesn't even stop to get some clothes on. He runs out of the boat. I mean, he wraps himself up and he goes. And the first to recognize Jesus is the one who was closest to him. So the closer you become to Jesus, the more you start to see him more often in your life. You want to be close to him, be in his word every single day. So for us, if we developed an intimate daily walk, you will recognize him in his work, and it'll be calling you into a deeper relationship. This contemplative disciple was the first to recognize him. And then activist Simon Peter, he's the first to run. He's ready to go. And as soon as he saw him, he's like, oh, I bet he started to go and then grabbed his outer garment and ran. Then he jumped in the water. The other disciples followed, bringing the boat. Peter's reaction, it's wonderful. It's also impulsive, right? But he's the one, remember, he's the one who denied Jesus. And yet there is something about the risen Jesus that means that Peter, he doesn't have to run from him in shame anymore. He can run to him. See, when Jesus shows up, he's not showing us to make us feel bad about what we've done in the past. He's showing us to invite us to run faster to him. I mean, it's a great picture for us. This is the model for us. No matter what we've done, no matter what's happened in our life, I want you to have the confidence, the freedom to run to Jesus. You don't ever have to run away from him. Remember when God shows up in the Garden of Eden right after Adam and Eve have sinned? He's seeking them out, and they run and they hide from him. That's the whole story of the Bible, is to say that choice you made, it wasn't a failure. I'm here to reconcile that failure. I'm here to help you overcome it. I'm here to tell you that I have made it whole. Just come to me. Jesus makes it possible for us to come into a relationship with God. The things that we have done, the failures we've done, do not separate us from his love. He is right there. And he comes, and this recognition then takes an invitation to an even deeper relationship. He's cooking. And he says, come on, I'm going to feed you breakfast. Bring me some of that fish. Bring me that fish you've caught. And it's so many fish. It's 153 fish. And some people have talked about, does this number symbolize anything in particular? The most important thing to remember there is it's a lot. It's a lot of fish. And they had caught nothing. And when they listened and followed Jesus' instructions, they had everything they need. The miracle is that the nets were not torn. No matter what happens, when you're following what Jesus has called you to do, you will not be torn down. You're not going to fall apart. You're not going to get burnt out and weary and stripped. When you follow Jesus, he's going to be able to hold all that abundance and bring you closer. And when God blesses us, he provides for us and he fills our nets. There's going to be abundance and it's not going to break apart. And then the second word of invitation, when he says, he invited them to follow instruction, then he invites them to have breakfast. And now, none of the disciples, none of them at that point dared to ask him, well, who are you? They know. They know now that it's Jesus. Jesus came and he gave bread to them, and he did the same with the fish. And Jesus, look at him. He's still wanting to be the one who's a servant to his disciples. Remember, he says, if you want to be like me, if you want to be the greatest, you have to be a servant of the other. And the meal is a sign of friendship and fellowship, but it also speaks to his desire to take care of our very practical needs. Wanting to provide us a safe place, a nourishing place, a relational place. But then that leads to the very climax of our story. Not only is Jesus with us in our struggles, he heals us from our past failures. And you see this incredible conversation that he has with Jesus, that Peter has with Jesus. And they finish eating, and Jesus says to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John. Now listen to how he addresses him. Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these? And you're like, more than what? Like more than the fish? More than anyone else? Do you love me more than anything else in the world? And he says, yes, Lord, you know I love you. He says, feed my lambs. Again, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Take care of my sheep. Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter, he's hurt. He's like, what? You're asking me a third time. You know I love you. Yes, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. He says, feed my sheep. And there's some things going on here. Think about this. They're right there at this charcoal fire with this fish. Do you remember the last time that Peter was around a charcoal fire? The very last time, it was when he denied him. How many times? 3 times. How many times did Jesus ask him, do you love me? 3 times. And so Jesus deliberately, he doesn't call him, hey, Peter, rock of the church. No, he says, Simon, son of John. That was his name before he came to Jesus. It wasn't Peter the rock. He's highlighting Peter's failure to live up to that name. His failure to live into the name he had, and his need for restoration. Now, Jesus isn't doing this to make him feel bad, no. But he's deliberately asking the same questions 3 times because Peter had denied him 3 times. He's not trying to make him feel bad. He's trying to bring him from a place of repentance to restoration and to recommissioning. And he's bringing him again through that process. Why is that important? Why is it important that Peter actually has to face his past? He has. Could he just move on and not deal with that? No, not really. Not if he's going to live an authentic life. Not if he would continually be stuck in that failure. He would not overcome it if he did not face it. Jesus wants Peter to own the problem, to own what happened. Henry Cloud, who's written incredible books about boundaries and how we deal things, he says, we have an innate ability for self-deception, right? We can convince ourselves that we've got it. We've got it figured out. Oh, I messed up, but I'm over that, and I don't need to deal with that anymore. I'm better. I'm fine now. I'm fine. How often do we say that to ourselves? We have an innate ability for self-deception. That's why when you go to any sort of recovery program or any kind of recovery, think about if you've ever been in AA or know someone who's gone through Alcoholics Anonymous, the key to recovery is to first acknowledge that you have a problem. And if you think about it, friends, we are all in recovery. We are all in recovery because we are recovering the image of God that is in us. Because that is who we truly are, but we have strayed from that image. And the only way to get back to that place is through Jesus Christ, who came to reconcile himself to us and to the world. You know, that is just what Jesus is doing, helping Peter to name the problem and to deal with reality. We cannot live in self-deception or in our own desire to act like we don't really have any problems, because we have plenty of problems. And we have plenty of places where we are failing. And if we don't name them and deal with them, we are going to just be living in a non-reality. And we want to live in the reality of resurrection. Not in some fantasy that we have come up with. That just keeps us locked in failure. And the thing is, Jesus doesn't want Peter carrying this failure into his future. And notice what Jesus doesn't do. The way he doesn't work. He says, hey, Peter, you remember how you denied me? Oh, he doesn't do that. He doesn't bring it up to pull him down or to shame him. Of course, Peter remembers it. You think shaming him is going to make it better? Instead, Jesus goes to the very root of the problem, and he says, do you love me? Do you love me? Jesus is highlighting that the very heart of the matter is a matter of the heart. You know, he's saying that the reason that Peter denied him was a love issue. That Peter loved himself, his reputation, what others thought of him more than he loved Jesus. So do you love Jesus more? That's what he's saying to Peter. Do you love me more than all of this? Do you love me more than yourself, more than your reputation? Do you love me more than what other people think? And that's what Jesus wants for us too. It's this problem right here. It's at the root of all humankind's condition and in our own lives. Somewhere at the root of our greatest failure is to fulfill the commandment. To love God, the Lord our God, with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, with all our strength. That's the root of all of our failures. And Jesus wants Peter to not only know that he can have forgiveness, but he also wants him to be fit for service. To be ready to serve. And in order for that to happen, in order to be ready to serve, ready to be someone who could not only be a disciple, but who can be a disciple who makes disciples, he has to deal with the heart issues. And we, friends, we have to deal with the heart issues, and they are hard issues. But we've got to deal with them. And Peter does. And amazingly, Jesus is not put off even by the denial that happened before. Jesus never stopped believing in Peter. Isn't that amazing? He denied him 3 times. Like he gave up on him. And Jesus never gave up on Peter. And I want you to know something. Jesus never gives up on you. Remember what I always say? God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. He will never give up on you. And that's great news for Peter. And for me, that the call of Jesus is greater than our fall. That the call of Jesus is greater than however far we can fall. And that our future is not locked in our failures. Peter, having faced up to his sin now, having been reaffirmed his love for Jesus, he is recommissioned and he is going to be sent into the world. And through this, we see this wonderful thing about God's character. That our God, oh my goodness, God's a God of second chances. No matter how many times we have a second chance, you can have multiple second chances. God's this God all about U-turns. You can keep on trying. At the beginning, we heard about Thomas Edison, and he was working on that crazy contraception of the light bulb. And there's a story that goes that this whole team of folks worked 24 straight hours to put the first light bulb together. And the story goes that when Edison finished with that one light bulb, he gave it to a young boy, a helper, who nervously carried it up the stairs. Step by step, he cautiously watched his hands. Obviously, he was a little frightened of dropping that priceless piece of work in that very first light bulb. And guess what happened? He dropped it. The poor fellow, he dropped that bulb. It got to the top of the stairs, and that light bulb dropped. And it took an entire team 24 hours to make another light bulb. And finally, they're tired, they're ready for another break, and Edison was ready for that bulb to be carried back up the stairs. Now, some of us might have said, nobody's carrying this light bulb but me. I'm the only one I trust. But the story goes that Edison gave that light bulb to the same young boy who dropped the first one. Isn't that forgiveness? Forgiveness for failures that we make that happen all the time. He gave him a second chance. And I love that God gave Peter and gives us all the second chances that we need all the time. Because the call Jesus has for you is greater than the falls of your failures. And he has a future for you that is greater than your failure. Because Christ has come for us to overcome. Thanks be to God.